Hello, everybody, and welcome to our series, How to Turn Fear into Confidence That Creates Cash. And I'm very excited about today's speaker. He is a fellow European, a fellow global warrior. He has lived everywhere, it sounds like, in the world, in the US, everywhere. In Germany, and he lives in Belgium now, so it's late there. So thank you, Gordon, for staying up. So Gordon is a motivational speaker. He is a leadership coach. He has, I don't know, I think it sounded like 30 years of experience in leadership.
I'm only 22.
So he comes with a wealth of knowledge, but I'll have him introduce himself a little bit, and then I'm going to have him give us some tips on how to get through these times and how to turn around that fear or that slight uneasiness that a lot of us are experiencing right now. So go for it, Gordon. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm from Yorkshire in the north of England, and I'm what I would be what you would call a typical Yorkshireman, which to my American brethren, that's like saying he's a Texan. It's the biggest state. We think we're the best, and that drives a lot of what we do. And I worked in IT for 25 years, driving projects. And when I started, we had a very structured, you'll do this for a year, and then you'll be a junior for a year, and then a programmer for a year, and a senior. And I just said, I'm not doing that. That doesn't feel like that feels too restrictive. How could I advance this? And what I realized was there was an awful lot of really, really difficult projects that nobody wanted to do because they were worried about failure. And I thought, if I do the stuff that people are afraid of and I'm successful, that's going to allow me to advance. So I went and took all of the things that nobody else wanted to do because they thought they would fail, and I used that, and that allowed me to become, get promoted quickly. I became a well-known turnaround expert, which put me in demand, and I've led $100 million projects.
Nice.
I'm just doing some work at the moment with Fujitsu. They brought me in twice now to turn around failing projects. I tend to be offered the captaincy of the Titanic just after it's hit the iceberg. And sometimes when the bow is just about to go below the water. But the good thing about that is that if everybody thinks it's going to fail and you fail, people say, "Oh, at least you tried." And if you actually succeed, you're a hero. Whereas if you're doing something where everybody thinks it'll succeed and you fail, now you're a failure. So for me, it was a no-lose scenario, and that allowed me to do that. And I've led projects around the world. I've led teams of over 1,000. I've run $300 million departments. I've helped improve operational performance by 50 to 500%. And then 5 years ago, I wanted to share my expertise because I had a slightly different approach to other people. And I decided that I wanted to share that. And I started writing on leadership. I built a following of 500,000, and we're going to talk about fear a little bit. I didn't write because I didn't think I could write, and I was worried that nobody would read it. But since then I've written, and I was also worried I wouldn't have anything to write. But since then I've written 1,500 articles. I've written for Inc., Entrepreneur, Forbes, Chicago Tribune, Addicted to Success, all of the major platforms, and my last book, Fast, which is about how to 4 principles for achieving success and driving results, was a finalist in Management Book of the Year. So somebody who was afraid he couldn't write, I did okay, and then this year I was selected the number 9 by Global Gurus, number 9 leadership expert and speaker in the world.
So that is
I'm not, but I'm not giving that award back.
So I'm so happy I have the number 9 guru of the world in this series. So I feel very honored. So since we have a guru here in this series, tell us a little bit now. So during this time of, we're still in the pandemic right now. At this time, the series will air in July. Things are opening up right now. Some businesses are opening up, but there are a lot of people still sitting at home, scared. They're still afraid to go out there. There's a lot of financial stress right now. There's unemployment is high here in the US and also around the world. I'm sure there are similar things going on. So what would be, first of all, what would be an advice you could give to somebody that's sitting at home right now, scared, and they don't know how to get out of this rut they're in?
So for me, I think that there's a number of things. I think if you're afraid of getting the disease and you're worried about that, then keep social distancing, wear a mask, keep social distancing, and only go out if you need to. Because what we're starting to see is that it is starting. I think there are 21 states where it's actually increased over the last week. A lot of the states where, New York, New Jersey, where it was really bad, it's going down. But in some of the, what you would call the red states that didn't get hit too bad at the start, they're now starting to pick up. So if you're worried about getting the disease, then stay safe. Personally, when I go out now, I take a mask with me. I don't always wear it. If I'm the only person on the street, then I'll just take it off, because then it's not great to wear a mask all the time. But as soon as I go into a shop or go into contact, I put the mask on, and I take care and protect myself, and that's just common sense to do that.
Right.
And that will help you get over some of the fear of that. I think in terms of a business, it is difficult, and I think what we're going to be going into now is there's going to be a lot more. We are not going to go back to the way it was. That's just not going to happen. Even if, even if COVID is 100% eradicated, we will not go back to the way we were. And the reason I say that is because so many companies now have had to operate in a virtual environment with people working from home. And as soon, if you can get that to work, now you don't need to have your Wall Street offices, so you're not paying big rents. You can cut a lot of your fixed infrastructure overheads down by getting rid of those offices, so it's cheaper for the businesses. It's also almost like a pay increase for people that are working from home. You don't have the dry cleaning. I'm not wearing a suit. All you can see is here. From down below, it's a whole different ballgame. So you don't. So we don't have the that cost. We're not traveling to work, so don't need to be spending money on gas for a car. And I reckon for a lot of people that would be like a 10 to 20% benefit. So when we come out of this, I think a lot of companies are going to look at it and think, well, why don't we just take those benefits? We didn't do it because we didn't think it was going to work, or we couldn't see how it was going to work, but we've now been doing it. Certainly in Europe, where we've been locked down for 8 weeks. And I think that that's going to drive a lot of businesses to change. And I also think there's been a lot of disruption that is going to change the way some companies do business, and that's going to create a lot more competition for how it works. And I noticed we live quite close to a pizzeria, very nice little restaurant. It seats about 12 people, and they do pizzas and takeaway. I would estimate that during the COVID crisis, their revenues doubled just by doing takeaway. Because there's a queue of delivery dudes outside of that restaurant every single day taking pizzas. So their revenues have gone up, their costs have gone down, because now they're not having to have waiters and waitresses. Now they might be losing a little bit of money into because nobody's buying a bottle of wine and those kind of things. But I suspect that their business model has now changed in a way that they're not going to want to go back.
So what I hear you say is change your business model, which
correct.
sounds like pivoting, right?
Yeah, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
change your business model. And also, what I also heard you say, it might never be the same because
It
companies
will not.
might be opening up to the telecommuting now, right?
Correct. And I think there's a couple of aspects. I think we've already seen that Twitter have told their people don't come back to work. You can now work from home indefinitely. I don't know if did you know that?
That's nice. I mean, I'm hoping that's going to happen to me.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate doing some work for Fujitsu. I've been leading a major change program from them, and I've been 100% from working from home. I haven't been to the office. I've never actually met any of the people on the project team, and it's been a change for me. It was a slightly different approach to leading, but I think that's going to become more of the norm because that's going to allow some of the companies that have mastered it to become more competitive, more profitable, and they'll start to do that. I think a lot of people are going to look and see how can we use this disruption that is forced on us to disrupt our business, and if they find a better way of doing it, why would you go back? I think some things, hairdressers, that's still going to require us to go into the hairdressers and get our hair cut. I don't see us doing that virtually, me cutting it with you giving me directions, telling me where to do. That's not going to. So there are going to be some businesses and industries that are going to stay the same. But I think what people need to do is we need to not be afraid as to how are we going to get through this, but sometimes think of it as this is going to be the new normal. What can I do to change, to adapt, to be part of it? And we were talking about a very good friend of mine, I hope he'll be a speaker on here, Nigel Risner, one of the top speakers in Europe. And I was talking to him as we started to do this, because I do a lot of speaking. I had a lot of gigs booked for this year, all of which have just disappeared.
Oh, yes.
They've either been converted into webinars or they've been moved to. I had 2 gigs in China, Shanghai and Beijing, booked for November of this year. They've moved them to December 2021.
Wow.
I'm supposed to be going to Johannesburg in 3 months. They're going to move that to Q4 or whatever. So anybody who does speaking in front of an audience, you're probably not going to do that this year. And that's where Nigel gets his revenue. And I used to say to him, well, do you do webinars? And he said, nope, never do webinars, can't do webinars, it's not for me. And now 8 weeks later, he and I have been on 2 webinars where he's been the star of the show. But he had to go and learn how to do that because he realized that this is going to be what we're doing for the next 6 to 12 months. And if I want to be able to get in front of an audience and do my speaking, I'm going to have to learn these new skills. And also as well, when it comes, for me in particular, with the way I make money, in addition to working projects, is through speaking. But now, when you're doing a webinar, people aren't paying the same fees because they're not getting the revenue in to pay the speakers. So now, what I'm having to do is I'm having to think, okay, well, I'm not going to generate revenue from speaking, but I'm still going to be speaking. How am I going to do that? So now it's about, okay, well, I'm going to have to create online courses, products that I can make the money on the back end, rather than on the speaking fee. So I've got some courses that I've kind of been thinking about, you know what, no, now is the time, put them in, because that's where the revenue is going to come from. Not that I'm not going to get the revenue from the front end, I'm going to get the revenue from the back end. So we've got to look at this and see how can we leverage it, what are some of the technological advances that we can take, because if we can do that, then not only will we get through this, but when it comes back in winter or when the next one comes in 2-3 years, we will have adapted to what is going to be the new normal, rather than hoping that normal comes back. And when you think about advances, the people that used to be selling horses and shoeing horses, when the car came along, if you're waiting for people to get bored with cars and come back to horses, good luck with that. Change is normally moving forward. It doesn't tend to come back. So a lot of the impact that this is going to have, are going to
Yeah.
stay with us for good or worse. And my brother is one of the people who's been impacted tremendously, and I had no clue what he was going to do, because my brother is well, my brother Phil, he's ex-army, and he's a mountain guide, and what he does is he takes people out trekking 2 or 3 times a week. He runs corporate team building events, and they go out and there's one called the Yorkshire Three Peaks, where it's a 12 to 24 hour walk up 3 mountains, and it's great for team building. But I don't know whether you know this, but when you're on lockdown, nobody has a mountain inside their house. So his business went from everything to nothing.
To nothing.
But what he did was he looked to it and he said, well, I need to make money. So what he did was he thought about, what is it that we're doing? Well, we're going up and down hills. So he actually created the staircase challenge. And then he ran events where he had people, he would tell them that this is how many flights of stairs you need to do the Yorkshire Three Peaks. And this is how you need to do for these various Phoenix. So this would be like, this is what it's like to go to the top of Camelback, and this is how many you'd have to do to get to the top of Squaw Peak. So he actually had people doing the walks in their homes, and then he was sending them certificates, selling them medals and trophies for having completed it. So he got them to do a 100% outdoor sport in their home in order for him to continue to do his business in a fashion, but then he had to change how he monetized it, because people wanted that exercise. And one of the things I did during the lockdown, I did 2 things. I thought, we're locked down, I might as well benefit. I've been learning Spanish, happy with that. And the other thing I did was I climbed Mount Everest.
Virtually.
Virtually, yeah. Came back, Mount Everest, 29,029 feet, which meant I had to go up and down my stairs from the basement to the first floor 1,936 times.
Wow.
It took me a month to do it. I had a chat, but he was like, he created charts that people could take, and then he was selling them for pennies. But if you've got 50 people doing it, he doesn't charge a lot when he's taking the people out on the walks. It's like $40-50 a time. So what he had to do was still get people participating, but then think about how he would monetize it differently. And take advantage of some of the things that are there. And what I found interesting is that my favorite restaurant, we are the 2 best restaurants in the area. One closed down for the entirety of the shutdown. They didn't open and do takeaway service. They just didn't do it. They just went, we'll close down and we'll reopen when it's done. But that's a loss of 2 months' revenue. I don't know what impact that has been on their business, but that was their approach. But if it comes back, that's not a sustainable interim solution. Closing down and not doing business has no upside to it, unless it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks and you think, what, we'll just chill out and get through this. And then one of the other businesses that I know, I was asking them, so why are you using delivery dudes or Uber Eats? And they said, well, we don't really want to do that. We have our own clientele. And I was like, yeah, but we come, they do have a very reliable clientele. I've never been in. It's a small restaurant, seats around 25 people. I've never been in and not known at least 3 groups of people at the restaurant. Never. But if you use something like delivery dudes and Uber Eats, you're now opening yourself up to a wider market. And because a lot of people are ordering, that's going to get fresh eyeballs on you, and that actually might allow your business to expand. And they said, yeah, but we don't want to do that. This is the way we've always done business, and we want to do that. No, leverage the things that are available. If there's new channels to market, take them. If there are no new channels to market,
Right.
create them.
Beautiful. So
Yeah.
let me just summarize for our viewers what I heard you say, because, so you are the perfect example as a speaker,
Yeah.
of somebody that had to pivot completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have this success story, how you, and we talked about that earlier, the stages are closed right now. So
Yeah.
you turned this into, okay, I got to do something different. And you had a webinar you did with 1,800 people.
Yeah.
Successful webinar. So that's a successful pivot. That's successful changing, or being open to change, right?
And that's led to now companies who saw us do that webinar approaching us about doing a webinar. From Nigel and I doing a webinar specifically for that company. So the leading telecoms company want us to do that. We won't be doing that for free. And we won't charge the same fee we would for speaking, but then we're not flying for one day to get there. We're not spending 1 or 2 days there to get over the jet lag, and we're not spending a day flying back. So something that would cost 4 days of time to get there, we can now sit down in front of our computers 15 minutes before, quick comb of the hair, wash of the face, maybe a shave, you're on, and then when the video, once the webinar's done, it's gone. So our costs have reduced. So if you're only charging 25%, you could probably do 3 or 4 a day. So
that's beautiful. I also heard you say that you are to take advantage of the technology.
Correct.
And take advantage of new infrastructure such as Uber Eats, such as different delivery services if you're a restaurant. And you gave a beautiful example of your brother who has actually turned his taking people into mountains as a guide. He's now teaching them he's teaching it from home and
climbing mountains at home.
Right. So that's genius. Now you've given some beautiful examples of how people that were impacted, where the jobs were literally gone, right? But it takes a little bit of creativity, right? So how do I tap, Gordon, into that? How do I get to that creativity? You did it, right? But what advice would you have for people? How do I get from this fear into that creative mode where I'm saying, okay, I'm going to change now. I'm going to change the way I'm doing things. How do you get there?
So there's a couple of things. The first thing I will tell people is that our most valuable asset is our brain. And our brain is ridiculously powerful. And if you focus on worrying and what could go wrong, your brain will give you 1,000,001 things to worry about and reasons why something won't work. Don't go down that path. Try and ask your brain, what can we do? Focus your brain on looking for solutions, looking for opportunities. Get your brain working for you, not against you by worrying. And I know that's easy to say because if you've got to put bread on, food on the table for the kids, worry is something that we have. But we're just going to try and, get out of that and say, okay, we are where we are now. I'm just going to worry about between 9 and 10, and then between 10 and 11, I'm going to think, okay, what can I do differently? And I think the other thing to do is to, get onto the internet and research what other people are doing. I don't know which came first, whether it was Uber or Airbnb, but I'm sure that one of those two looked at the other and said, wow, I wonder if we can apply what they did to taxis, or can I do it to hotels? So, for something like my brother who's got people doing the exercising, climbing Mount Everest in the house, is that kind of thinking something that you could look at and say, okay, well, could I apply that to my business? Or delivery dudes, is there something that I could use that's similar to that? Or do I have a direct competitor who's changed their model, and I can just replicate exactly what they did. Because a lot of time people think of innovation, of coming up, innovation. If you ask the majority of people, they will tell you that innovation is about finding new ways of doing things.
I love that, finding new ways of doing things.
And that's partly true.
Yeah.
My favorite use of innovation is finding new applications of things that we already do. So you don't necessarily need a new idea. You just need to apply an existing idea into a different set of circumstances. So don't be blocked in by your thinking. And I was speaking with somebody today, and it was really funny because she's writing a book called How Our Beliefs Stop Us from Making the Progress We Desire.
Yes.
I was like, brilliant, that's a great book. And she said to me, would you write a foreword for the book? And I was like, yeah, of course. So I wrote the best foreword ever. It's amazing. And she contacted me this morning and she said to me, I don't know what to do. And I said, about what? About the foreword. I said, I've written it. She said, yeah, but I didn't know if you would. So I asked 2 people, and both of you have written a foreword, and they're both brilliant. And you can only have one foreword in a book. So I don't know how to choose. And I said, why'd you say that? She said, well, I believe it's true. You can only have one foreword in a book. And I said, well, why don't you believe you can have 2 forewords in a book and use both of them? She said, can I do that? And I said, your book is about getting beyond your beliefs.
Yes.
So start the forward with, yes. I believed I could only have one. I got 2. I didn't know how to do. So I decided not to believe it wouldn't work. I couldn't do it, and believe I could do it. And now I can go forward. So and I know it's difficult to do. And the reason I tell you that story about the book is because she's writing a book about changing your beliefs, and yet she was blocked herself. So
that is amazing.
So even experts in this at times get trapped into it, and we just got to
think outside the box. That's what I hear you say.
Yeah.
Don't be limited by your beliefs. Don't be limited by how things are supposed to look like, right? Correct. So that is getting us into again, creativity. Also, I heard you say, look at what others are doing, what models are they developing, and take that as inspiration. Yeah. And then I heard you say, don't fill your brain with too much worry. Use your brain in the creative process.
Nothing positive comes from a negative attitude.
Right.
So we've got to try and remain positive. And then one of the things I would say about creativity, I don't know if there's a lady called Diana Niad, I think she's called, and she was the first woman to swim from Cuba to Miami. And she a lot of time people kind of do it in some kind of cage because of sharks. So they're kind of there's some kind of protection. I don't know what it is, but she swam from Cuba to Miami, and there's a thing called the box jellyfish. It's one of the most deadliest jellyfish, and they're just not in this area. And yet she got stung by one twice, and normally they kill you.
Wow!
And she'd been swimming for like 36 hours when this happened, so called it off, and then decided she was going to do it again. But and there's a great talk of her on TED Talks. Diana Nidd, she's called. I think she was like 60, something like that, when she did this. And she went to a school. She was telling them the tale of how she did, how she'd done it, and she got stung by the jellyfish. And then one of the kids, I don't know, I think they were like 8, 9-year-old kids she was talking to, and one of the kids said, "Why don't you get a school of mackerel to swim in a protective V that ward off the jellyfish so you won't get stung?" And she said, Oh, what a fantastic idea. But, I'm not sure I could persuade Mackerel to do that. And she went home and then she was telling her husband, and she said, actually, why don't I just create my own V and have it in front of me so it creates a kind of a frame around me to block it out? And she went and did that, and she went and she swam and she successfully did it. So one of the things I would do is, if you're not sure about your business, maybe go and ask some of your kids, because they don't have same restrictions
I
on
love it.
thinking.
Ask your kids.
Yeah, ask your kids. Take out one of the things about leadership that drives me batshit crazy is that a lot of leaders think that all of the good ideas need to come from them. I'm in charge. I'm the source of all the knowledge and ideas.
Right.
Doesn't work that way. Nobody's cornered the market in good ideas. So ask everybody. Get some. Maybe somebody who's not involved in it will see it from a different perspective as you will, and they might say something that you would just automatically dismiss, but actually, yeah, maybe I could train some mackerel or create something that would be the same kind of idea that would work. So we've got to be open to possibility and just let our brains work and just open it up. Don't be closed. Open it up, because the world's not going to go back. It's not going to stay as it is. It's not going to stay as it is now. But the positive impacts that we've had will go forward with that.
But I really liked what you said. Ask your kids, because kids don't have the limiting beliefs yet. They still have the out of the box thinking. They're creative. So that's something that really stuck with me. So that's awesome. So I have one last question.
So let me just say one more thing.
Please.
So when I was 52, I decided I was going to run a marathon, Dusseldorf Marathon, and every time everybody, there was a reason for it. It's flat. It's flat. And everybody said to me, "Oh no, you can't do it." And I said, "Oh, I'll prove you wrong." And 6 months later, I ran the marathon, and I wrote my first book, Leadership. It's a marathon, not a sprint. That kind of talked about how I'd applied leadership to get me through this. And at the end of it, my wife said to me, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "I don't know." She said, "Why don't you make a movie?" And I said, "I can't make movies." And she said, "You couldn't run a marathon." I was like, yeah, good point. Good point. So don't dismiss things. Just because your first thought is, "Nah, that'll never happen." Just maybe take a maybe approach.
Okay, so I have one last question for you that I ask every speaker at the end, and that is, what would the 80-year-old Gordon tell the present Gordon about, or what message would he give to the present Gordon?
So the 80-year-old Gordon would say to me what the 60-year-old Gordon would say to the 20-year-old Gordon. Don't wait to make the changes that you know are the right thing to do. Make those changes early and benefit from them for longer. I think a lot of us know what to do, and I have a friend who's doing a job, and he knows he should quit, but he won't do it. And I know that when he quits, he will wish he'd done that 2 years earlier. And it's like, for me, writing, I waited until I was 52 to write.
I love that. Don't wait to change. Time is now. That's what I heard you say. Time is now. Don't wait.
Absolutely. And it's not about do it or you'll have regrets, because a lot of that is it's people not doing it at all. But I think a lot of people make a change, but they make it not, they do it before the sell-by date, but once it's really rocking and rolling, you'll just be thinking, why didn't I do this 5 years earlier? Why didn't I do this 7 years earlier, 10 years earlier, when I knew it was the right thing to do? Trust your gut.
Trust your gut and do it now. Don't wait until later. That's beautiful advice. Now, how can people find you?
So I'm fortunate. I am the only Gordon Tredgold in the entire world.
No. Wow, you are
Yes.
unique.
And some people will say that's a good thing. So people can just Google Gordon Tredgold, and that'll help them find my Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, my webpage, any of my articles in Inc., Entrepreneur, and Forbes. So just Google me. I'm accessible. If you reach out to connect, I'll reply. If you reach out, if you email me with questions, I reply. I'm very. I love to give back.
And do you have a free gift maybe you can for people to give away maybe?
So I wrote a book called Fast, 4 Principles Every Business Needs to drive success and achieve results. If people want to email me at gordon@gordontredgold.com, I'll send them a PDF electronic version of that. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful, because that is beautiful.
Finalist for Management Book of the Year.
That is very generous of you. Okay, so everybody, Gordon has the most amazing book he wrote, and it talks about FAST. Now, let me see if I remember. F stands for focus, A stands for accountability, S stands for simplicity.
Yeah.
And T, oh my God, what was it? Oh, T, what was T? I forgot. Sorry. Refresh my memory.
Transparency.
Transparency. Southwest has that, transparency. That's their slogan. So thank you. So a free book copy from Gordon.
So what I'll do is if they email me, I'll send it. I've just changed my back end processing. So I used to have a web link on it, but I've now moved to another. I moved to Cantra because I need to make changes as part of this COVID, and I don't have that link up and running yet. So if they email me, gordon@gordontredgold.com, I'll pop them a copy by return within 48 hours.
That is very generous. So thank you so much, Gordon. And I'm certain our paths will cross again. But I want to thank you for this interview, for all the wonderful tips, and for the generous offer of sending the book to our viewers. So
you're
thank
welcome.
you.